Good evening, everyone. This is so fun because it's so close. It's like I get to almost reach out and touch someone. I might, you never know. I've been known to do that. I'm really grateful for all of you guys showing up tonight, and thank you, Julie, for hosting the Philosopher's Cafe and giving me an opportunity to share what I really enjoy, and that's humor and making people also see their sides of humor. One thing I've noticed about humor, as I've been kind of looking at it more and more, is that it's very subjective. Everybody finds different things funny. What is very funny to one person may not be funny at all to another. And that usually comes from everything from our upbringing, our beliefs. It can be religious beliefs. A person that's Jewish may not find a Jewish joke very funny. You have, our prejudices, which we all have, whether we think we do or not. You see somebody walking down the street with purple hair, and all of a sudden you might find that funny, and if you start laughing at them, they might not. I have a couple of friends in Vernon, and in fact, the lady of this couple attended the last cafe we had here on this, and she let it slip one day that they actually get their kicks. And she and her husband just met 5 years ago and found out that they shared this in common and that they got their kicks out of making little dogs bark. So they see little dogs going down the street and they turn and go at these little dogs. Now, as the owner of a small dog, I don't think that's funny. Because yes, I thought it was pretty funny that they did this, and she just thought this was just hilarious that they had this in common. And I thought, soulmates, definitely. And I've given them the name of my therapist, so I'm hoping, God willing, they will get help for that one. But having said that, humor is definitely subjective. And so what I realized, though, is that humor has to come from relationship. It can't come contained. And so that can be relationships that we have with each other, our spouses, our friends, our family. It can be relationship with ourselves. It can be relationship with strangers. It can even be relationship with pets. I had a little dog. She was a little purebred Maltese, pure white, for those of you that don't know. And, that dog could get in trouble. She got out of the house, even if it hadn't rained in weeks, she would find a mud puddle, come back and be just dripping black with mud, and this dog grinned. Now, how many of you in here, have you guys heard of this? I never heard of this until this, yes.
And a white dog will always find the mud.
Yes, they do. So yeah, this dog used to grin, and she also had issues. I know that most of us have issues, but this dog did too. And she had separation anxiety, so she couldn't be left alone. So whenever I would leave her, which I had to do at times, now looking back, I should have just got a kennel, but I wasn't on it. And so I would come home, and this dog would do anything from pull all the toilet paper off the roll and bunch it up in the middle of the living room floor, and she would do all kinds of funny things. And then she would sit back as soon as I would walk in the door, and she would go in a position in the middle of the living room where I could see her, and she would lift her lip and grin at me. And I found out later, because I said to my mom, I said, I think Mindy's grinning at me. And she goes, oh, get away. And I said, no, I'm serious. And I found out later that it is in fact true that there are some dogs that will grin. And so whenever this dog pulled a stunt, that's what she would grin at me. So because she kept getting into trouble when I'd leave her alone, I had made an effort to try to take her with me as many places as I could. And so this one day I took her, I was going to get a few groceries, and I thought, I can just take her and leave her in the car. And every time when I would come out to the car, of course, any of you how many people in here have owned dogs? Because then you'll relate a little bit. Okay, most of us. So they get up and they're so excited to see you, and they somehow have radar. They know when you're coming. And she's at the window, and as soon as I would click the lock, she would always hop over into the passenger side. Well, this one day, I come out from getting groceries, and I put the groceries in the trunk, and I go around, and I click. And instead of hopping into the passenger side, she hopped into the back seat. I mean, I noticed it because it was a little odd. She would always hop into the passenger seat, I'd get in the driver's seat, and she'd hop back on and be all excited to see me, even if I was gone for 2 minutes. And so I get in, close the door, and all of a sudden, I get this smell come up. I couldn't believe it. This dog had done a number right in my driver's seat. Now, this dog was, yes, yes. This dog was completely trained. This was no accident, people. I turned around and I looked at her in the back seat, and she just sat there and pulled up her lip and grinned at me. Yes, yes. That's
again.
I ended up, I did. I had to find a home because, I mean, I couldn't keep her. She was just that bad. And it was only when she was left alone. And so I ended up finding a home for her that there was always somebody there. And I was very honest with the person. But that taught me that, like, even animals can have senses of humor, because I know she was just laughing at me like, you dare leave me alone even in the car for 15 minutes, and this is what's going to happen. So not only did she have a sense of humor, she was vindictive. But yeah, our relationships are the things that determine, and that, like I said, can come from family, friends, anywhere. But the ones that I seem to have noticed that have the most humor in them are parents and children, grandparents, grandchildren. I've got 2 granddaughters. They're 8 and 6 now, both just adorable. One is my son's daughter and one is my daughter's daughter. And my son, he's a real man's man, and he likes the hunting and the fishing and quadding and golfing, you name it. And so he has a daughter, and so of course, and he loves cars. He's a heavy-duty mechanic as well as a high-performance mechanic. And so he imports cars from Japan, and they're real fast. Don't ask me either. There's ZXs something. He always tells me what they are. I have no idea. But they're fast. And they have some of them have drivers on the other side, or the steering wheel on the other side, yeah. And so anyway, he's driving down the road one day, and he says to his daughter, Brooklyn, he says, so what kind of car do you want to drive when you get older? And Brooklyn says, I think I'd like to drive a sports car like you drive, Daddy. And he's like, yeah, that's my girl, right? A few minutes down the road, she goes, wait, no, I know what I want to drive. I want to drive an ice cream truck. Then I can have ice cream whenever I want. Oh, the kids are so honest. They just come out with anything. I remember my mom had, they lived in the same neighborhood their whole life. And consequently, I got to live in the same neighborhood my whole life. And it's really kind of neat because everybody knows everybody. And you have, in the old neighborhoods anyway, they have those little corner where there's the grocery store, the drugstore, the shoemaker, okay? And this grocery store, my mom and dad had frequented their whole life. And so when the grandkids came along, my mom used to just love taking the grandkids over to show them off. And so this one day, I was over visiting with my kids. My son was very little. My daughter was about 3 and a half. And we go over to the corner grocery store. And of course, my mom's just beaming because she gets to show off the grandkids. Now, to back up here a minute, my mom had quite an illness. And she ended up losing a lot of weight. And in the process of losing this weight, she had wrinkled really badly. And she was very, very self-conscious of it. And she was always talking about it. And I said, Mom, you look wonderful. Forget it. Don't worry, right? But anyway, it was a hang-up of hers, and which we all have. And so anyway, we go into the grocery store this day, and my daughter was standing beside the meat aisle, the meat counter. And my mom had gone way down further, and my daughter had her finger on the packaged chicken, and she's got her finger on it, and she's playing with the cellophane. And I said, Christy, don't do that, honey. I said, don't play with food. And she looks down at it, and she looks up, and she hollers across. Now, the owners of the grocery store just happened to be standing back there, and the butcher. And my mom knows them all, of course. And all of a sudden, my daughter yells out, Grandma, this chicken's wrinkled just like you. Yeah. My poor mom. Yeah, her whole face went red. It was really funny because, yes, they're so honest. Kids are so honest. I ended up having quite the experience with my granddaughter. I used to go pick her up quite often from her babysitter, who I got to know quite well. And to qualify again, I ended up, because I had a sore back, to wash the granddaughter's hair and shampoo it and rinse it would be really hard on my back. And so I got in the habit of showering with them. Big mistake. So I go to pick Cameron up one day and qualify again. Cameron got in the habit of just referring to her anatomy at the bottom as front bum and back bum, but the whole thing was called a bum, okay? I was okay with that. So I go to pick up her from Sue's one day, excuse me, and Sue, the babysitter, who I knew quite well, says, you know, Michelle, I don't know how to tell you this, but I have to tell you. I said, yeah. And she says, well, the other day during rest period, she says, we're all quiet and Cameron's laying on the couch and she's got her head back and her hands behind her bed and hands behind her head. And she goes, Sue? I go, yes, dear. My Nana has a really hairy bum. Now, my immediate, after I got over my shock, my next thought was, I wonder how many more people she has said this to. At the last Philosopher's Cafe that I told that story, I forgot to qualify that she calls front and back. I think those people left here with this vision of me growing a wig out my rear. I was just, it was even worse, right? Because I'm like, no, really. Yeah, children are so, they're just open, they're honest, they say it, and that's where the humor comes from, is just their honesty and openness, but boy, it can be embarrassing. I have this, this memory that I want to share with you, and what I've learned is that whenever we have memories, if they're attached to emotion, we seem to hang on to the memories a lot better, and sometimes that's not good because they're not good memories, but in the case of humor, if you guys can think of anybody, and we'll be having discussion later, we can chat about it, but if you think of anybody in your life that's not here anymore, or you know, some that still are, your memories will often be of the things that you laughed about together. And I had memories of going to my grandparents' farm. It was just outside of Edmonton, and I had memories of kittens and going for walks with Grandpa, and I had memories of, you know, he always had juicy fruit gum. That was something odd that stuck. I think that's the smell that stuck that memory. And so anyway, once my grandpa passed away, my grandma moved into a seniors facility in Edmonton, quite a nice one, but it was way on the other side of town. And so my husband at the time used to work out of town a lot, and I thought, well, I'm going to have Grandma over for a sleepover. So I phone her up, and she's like, oh, yeah, okay. So I go pick her up, and this is the big deal because she's going to spend the night, and my kids are all excited. And so we get the kids settled into bed, and Grandma loved to play cards, and so her and I played cards. And she was a night owl, which I loved because I am too. And so we played cards till about 2 a.m., and I had offered her my daughter's bed. And she had said, well, you know, I have a little bit of a weak bladder. She said, so I'd kind of like to be, you know, near a bathroom. And we had a half bath off our bedroom, and so I said, well, you can sleep with me, Grandma, but I said, I have a water bed. And I said, I don't know if you're going to be comfortable on it. And she goes, no. And I mean, you'd have to know my Grandma Frigon. She never complained about anything. Sorry. She just was the sweetest thing. Would never, so she goes, no, I'd like to try that. I said, okay. So I let her use the washroom first. She gets ready for bed. Now she's in the bedroom. She's getting changed. I'm brushing my teeth. And all of a sudden I hear this noise. And I couldn't quite make out what it was, but it was really loud. And because I was bent over with the water running as I was rinsing, I couldn't do anything at the split second, and so I quickly finished. I peek my head around, and I can't really see Grandma. I can just see a piece of her. And I go walking over, and she's laying stuck in the waterbed. Don't ask me how this happened. But she has managed to wedge herself into the waterbed. The bladder has moved over. And it's one of the old-fashioned waterbeds, the bladder, and it's king size. And she is in between the bladder and the frame of the bed, right on the wood. And she's laying there like this, poker stiff, head up to the ceiling. And of course, I'm worried that she hurt herself, because I don't know how this happened. And I said, Grandma, are you okay? She's like, I suppose so. I think she actually thought this must be what a waterbed feels like. It didn't clue into me then. And I was like, oh dear. Now, to qualify again, my grandma was about 4'6", and she was almost as wide as she was tall. So now I have her stuck in the waterbed, and I I don't know how to get her out because the water bladder has pushed back up against her and it's got her so tightly wedged that I couldn't get my fingers even in beside her. And her arms are like this. And so I wish I would have had a shot of how it happened because I still to this day could not figure out how this happened. And so I said, well, Grandma, we have to get you out of there. And she goes, oh, really? I guess so. I said, Grandma, you're stuck. You're not on the bed. You're stuck in the bed. And she's like, oh, I thought it felt kind of funny. So I start trying to get her out. Well, I pushed and I pulled and I got on the bed and wedged my feet underneath and trying to get them under the bladder, trying to lift. And she's heavy. And so finally I looked at her and I said, and I sat there and I thought, Grandma, I don't know what we're going to do. Because, I mean, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And it ran through my brain, you know, the Ghostbusters tune. Who are you going to call? It's like, okay. It's like, Houston, we have a problem. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to pull her out, and my grandma starts giggling. Well, she's giggling, and the whole bed starts jiggling. And now I'm starting to laugh, and we're losing any strength we had. You know how when you laugh, you just lose it. So the two of us have tears pouring down our faces. She's still stuck. I do not know what I'm going to do. And so I sat down beside the bed, and I'm just crying and laughing all at once. And all of a sudden, I don't know to this day, I still think it's a divine intervention. In fact, I will stick by that till my deathbed. But I don't know if it was because of the weak bladder and the idea of like having her in there all night. I don't know what did it, but somehow, some way, I just got this. You've heard of people under duress, they get superhuman strength. That's what happened because I managed to lift that woman out and it was just like whoosh, and she's standing in front of me. The two of us stood there, absolutely killed ourselves laughing. We couldn't even go to sleep after. We were laughing that hard at this whole episode. I ended up telling that at her funeral because I knew, my mom had a big family, Catholic, French, big family. And all the cousins, aunts, uncles, none of them had ever, she had told a few of them, but none of them had really heard the story. The humor that brought up at her funeral was just phenomenal. And so then it prompted a bunch of the cousins to start telling some of their funny stuff with Grandma. We had a ball. But you know, it's funny because I noticed when I was looking at humor and thinking about it, that humor and humility both start with H-U-M. Hum. It's like, I have had, you remember when I said that, you know, all humor has to come in relationship, and its relationship can be with strangers, it can be with anybody. Well, I had the best of intentions when I went to aquasize class one day. My girlfriend and I decide we're going to get into shape. That's it. There's aquasize classes happening. So we go over to the local pool. And I mean, we're in the aquasize class, and it's, you know, you go to the side, and to this side, and then you do jumping jacks. And in this particular facility, there was a hockey arena right in the same building. And they had vending machines and a huge observation deck that wrapped around a good chunk of the corner of the pool. And many times after hockey would let out, people would come over to the observation deck and they'd be watching. And this one day we're at aquasize, and I noticed that there was like a lot of people up there, and they seemed to be, usually they're interested in what they're doing. Very few are watching us unless it's parents watching kids in their swimming lessons. But this day, these people seem to be extremely interested in these old fogies doing aquasizes. And I mean, we're jumping and giving her, and we're into water about up to our chests. And my girlfriend's standing beside me, and I'm watching, and the crowd's growing, and they're growing bigger and bigger. And I mean, I'm noticing it, but I'm so interested in watching what I'm doing and focused on my instructor and keeping on doing what she's doing. And I'd look up again, and now they're laughing, and they're pointing. Well, all of a sudden, I realized there's something funny. It took me a few minutes to realize it was me. My bathing suit had gone below my breasts. And at the time, I didn't have these breasts. This was before I had a breast reduction. My breasts were massive, okay? They were like balloons. And boys, And so it was not something that could be ignored. These people were up there howling. There was young kids from hockey pointing, killing themselves laughing. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, dear God. And I pulled up my baby. I slithered to the dressing room. So that was strangers. That was just me and a group of strangers. And I'm sure some of them have still remembered it. It must have been a sight doing jumping jacks.
Oh my.
Yeah, it was funny. Another thing I noticed that's really easy to find humor with is the gender traits. Have you guys ever noticed how different, men and women, I cannot believe the difference in our traits. I know that that's a good thing on lots of counts. Men, I'll pick on you first. What is it with men and directions? You guys hate to ask for directions.
Because we know where we're going.
Yeah, really? Yeah, it's so funny. This is generally, because there's differences in all of it. So when I speak about these general traits, it is in the bigger picture because there's exceptions. But I've noticed with my own men in my life, father, brother, husbands, I've noticed that they don't like to ask for directions. And it's been a real bone of contention at times because we're driving. I remember one time, my husband and I were in Edmonton, and his grandmother lived in Leduc. Now, for those of you that don't know, Leduc is just 20 minutes south of Edmonton. But we were on the east side of the city when we decided to go. And so rather than drive back to the center of the city and then go south on the highway, my husband says, I know a shortcut to Grandma's. Okay. So away we go on country roads. We're driving. I mean, we should have been at Leduc a long time. And finally I said, there's only farmhouses. So it's like we have to stop and ask for directions. No. Finally we see this guy on a motorcycle. And he pulls up. I said, flag him down. So, and my husband's driving. He flags him down. The guy on the motorbike pulls up, and he's got one of those helmets that, the helmet itself goes right across the mouth. So all there is a visor for eyes and a speaker. Well, my husband's hard of hearing. But his good ear was facing this guy, so I thought everything's okay. He's listening to the directions, and the guy's giving him quite explicit. I mean, we must have been more lost than we thought because it was like go half a mile, turn left. It was quite detailed instructions. And I'm sitting in the passenger side and I can't make out a lot of what he's saying because of this mouthpiece thing. But I thought, perfect, we're getting directions. And my husband's going, yeah, okay, good. Well, thank you very much. And away the guy goes. My husband puts the car in drive. And he looks at me and he says, so which way do we go? So even when they ask for directions or get directions, it's like, whew. I thought I wasn't listening to him. So needless to say, we were really late getting to Grandma's house. But I did have a time where it kind of came back to bite me, this judgment that I had. They say whatever you judge will come back to bite you. My husband and I had rented a vehicle in Toronto, and we were driving through, we were heading to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And somehow we took a wrong turn and we ended up in Detroit. And we needed to figure out how to get out. And and he's driving, I'm doing the map thing. And I said, I don't know where we went wrong, but we're lost. And so I'm trying to get him to stop and look for directions and ask for directions. No, we'll find our way out. And finally, I'm really cannot figure out where we went wrong on this. And I cannot find out where we are because we haven't got a city map of Detroit now. And so I get frustrated and I say, oh, for God's sake, would you just stop and ask somebody? And he goes, no, I don't think we want to do that. And I said, well, and I'm going to start in. And I look up and he goes, no, look around. And I look around, and I'm sure we were in the seediest part. If there is any more seedier, then it's got to be really scary because all of a sudden I'm seeing there's like abandoned buildings and groups of pretty rough-looking guys standing against these fences. It was just like a ghetto. Okay, hon, you're right. We don't need any directions. We'll be just fine. So we took off. So needless to say, this little judgment I had about men and directions kind of toned down a bit after that. I thought, okay, there's a time and place for asking for directions. But speaking of gender traits, I thought, I've got to pick on the women for a few minutes. It never ceases to amaze me how much stuff we have. Like, have you guys ever noticed? Like, men could live in way smaller houses. I just, yeah. I looked at just the amount of stuff in a bathroom. And I am not considered a shopper, nor am I considered high maintenance. I mean, I see my daughter and her friends and some other people, like they're really, like they love to shop. I go if I need something, okay? And even I have all this junk, all this stuff, right? And I just looked at the bathroom alone. We have face cream, wrinkle cream, eye cream. We've got makeup remover. We've got, all this makeup. We've got masks. We've got masks for rejuvenating, masks for cleansing, masks for taking away your lines. I mean, it's just endless. How many lotions and potions do we really need, ladies, right? It's amazing. You get the men and they've got the razor, a can of shaving cream, their toothbrush, and maybe some cologne. And they're done. So how big of a bathroom would they need if it wasn't for all of our stuff? And then you take closets. Okay, how many ladies in here can honestly say, put up your hands if it applies, that you've given your husbands the same amount of closet space as you have? Not a hand. I knew it. How many would say their husbands have just a little bit less than them? Not a hand. How many would say their husbands hardly have any closet space when they have all their stuff? Yes. Yes. It's my experience that the men get like maybe a third, maybe. And then if there's extra rooms in the house, like spare rooms, front hall closets, laundry rooms with closets, it's all the women's stuff. And heaven forbid if you're a woman that fluctuates in weight, because then you don't just have all of your seasonal stuff, you have all of your sizes stuff too. I mean, it's amazing, our stuff. So yeah, women have some pretty funny traits too. But I was thinking about the different traits, and I was thinking that the one that I find the most fascinating is the women's ability to multitask. I mean, it's amazing. A woman can be, cooking dinner, making lunches for the kids while the dinner's cooking, and then filling out some forms because the kids need them for school, and then, she's going into the fridge to get the lunch stuff out and realizes some old leftovers, so she's throwing those out. And she's got the garbage now, so she's going to get the garbage out. And she's doing all this stuff at one time. And the whole time she's doing this, she's on the phone to a friend that's all upset, and she's offering a warm shoulder. The whole time. Breaking up fights with the kids. There's no end to what a woman can't do at one time. Men, on the other hand, when they have a project, they are focused. And I mean, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that these men are like this, because God knows we would never get as much done as they can when they're focused. But when they're focused, when they're cooking, you wouldn't dare interrupt them. You wouldn't dare. And they do not clean as they go. Have you ever noticed what a kitchen looks like after a man has cooked? There's flour everywhere, there's dirty dishes, and it seems like every pot, every bowl, everything is dirty. And it's like they're doing that task, and that's the only task they're doing. But I did realize that there is a time sometimes when men actually do multitask. How many of you ladies take a magazine or reading material to the bathroom? Men do. They multitask. That's their multitasking. And the thing is, they will take, like I've seen them take, they'll take a cup of coffee, they'll take, a magazine or a book. I've even seen a snack go in. It's like they're going to a sporting event. I'm just like, yeah, they're definitely, but that's their multitasking as far as I can see. And I mean, again, this is general. It's not always. It's funny because when we think about the relationships that we have with people and the different humor that can come up, one of the things that I remembered was that I had taken this suggestion from my mom. She had talked to my Aunt Rose, my dad's sister, and my aunt had a bucket list, even though she didn't call it a bucket list. But she had things she wanted to do before she died. And my mom said, and I mean, my Aunt Rose and my mom, they were ultra conservative, ultra conservative. And so when I heard this, I was shocked Because my mom said, yeah, Auntie Rose said she'd really like to go see some male strippers before she dies. Like, really? Auntie Rose? Yeah. I said, well, she goes, yeah, like, exotic dancers. I said, I know what you mean. So I thought, okay. So I searched it out and kept my ears open. And I don't know how many of you ever heard, but there was this group that was called the Chippendale Dancers. Yeah, all these heads going, oh, I know where you ladies were years ago. And they were really classy. You saw them?
No, I
Oh.
saw the calendar.
Oh, you saw the calendar. Was it good? Good? I didn't get to see that. Yeah. Well, these Chippendale guys were mostly, they did the big cities, and they were mostly in Vancouver. And so, and I heard that they were very classy. Like, they didn't take it all off. They didn't, they were very classy, very good dancers. And so I hear that this group is coming to Edmonton that is like the Chippendale Dancers. Like, okay, that sounds good enough, right? As long as they're like them. And I'd never been to this either, so I mean, it was a new experience for me. I thought, okay, this is fun. It's my aunt and mum. So I arrange it, and by the time I'm, talking to a few of my friends, now I've got a couple of my friends. One of them's bringing her mom, and another one's bringing her mother-in-law. So now there's like a group of us going, right? So anyway, the night comes, and my Aunt Rose, who instigated all of this, is sick. And I know she got way too nervous. I know that's what happened, right? So now it's just my two girlfriends, mom-in-law, and my mom and I. So we take off. And of course, as you get older, you get a little bit more careful about being on time. And so we left like at 6. It was 15 minutes to get there for 7. So we were there by 6:15. And so we got sat right up front, right? And the stage was curved like this. And the little bar tables that they had? They probably still have those kind. The little round ones. And they had these bar tables pulled right up against each other and right up against the stage. And then they sat us up against those bar tables, okay? So here's my mom, Joey's mom, Colette's mom, or mother-in-law. And they're all sitting right there. And then us girls are just 1, 2, and 3, middle and side. And these guys came out, and they had on, there was 4 of them. And there was a fireman, a policeman, a businessman, and then Tarzan. Yeah. These guys came out, and I tell you, they were such good dancers. Like you say, they were yummy. They were very, very nice looking, and really good dancers. But as they started getting, and they see these ladies in the front here, and they're playing it up. They're really going to have fun with this, right? So as they're getting into it more and more, I'm starting to realize, they're not stopping. They're not stopping at the G-string. They're not stopping. They're bearing it all. And here's my mom and the other ladies, and they're just like this. And these guys are just hooting it up, and they're having a ball. They're not even staying on the stage now, especially Tarzan. He was right into it. He's hopping 1 foot on one little round table, another one another, and he's just whittling it, just giving her. My mom's dying. My mom is sitting there, and she's like, and this guy, he takes the baby oil out of this strap around his leg, and he's handing it to my mom. And he's saying, come on, just put some baby oil. And she's like, no, get away. The other moms are dying too. The one, Joey's mom, she was like, had her eyes covered and peeking between the eyes. I don't know what she thought that was going to do, but it was really funny to watch. Finally, my mom actually grabbed the baby oil. This guy would not give up. She grabbed the baby oil and shot the bottle like this. Back to him, right? I was laughing so hard that my jaws and my stomach hurt for at least 4 days after. It was unbelievable to watch this. And I think those dancers had more fun at that show than they've ever had, because they had these ladies just bent over and crawling under their tables. So we're going home, and I said to Mom, so what did you think of the show? Yeah, well, it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I said, really? What were you expecting? You wanted to see a male strip show? She said, you told me they didn't take it all off. I said, no, I told you the Chip and Dale dancers didn't take it all off. I said, apparently these guys aren't them. I said, by the way, and I'm dropping her off, and I said, my dad was ultra conservative, and ultra protective about my mom, right? I'm dropping her off, and I said, by the way, Mom, where did you tell Dad we were going? Because I knew she hadn't told him. She goes, I just told him we were going to see some dancers. That's good, Mom. I'm glad that's what you told Dad. She was so pleased with herself that she was able to tell the truth and not tell the truth. She didn't actually lie. So she was really excited about that. So what I've learned in my experiences with humor is that if we have relationships with people and there's no humor, they go so flat. And so the laughter is so important to keep up. And we have this amazing ability when we really are in the right space, a headspace, to take any situation, whether it's getting your grandma stuck in a waterbed or taking your mom to a strip show. Like, it really doesn't matter what you're doing, but it can be very, very uplifting and very funny. And those are the memories. My mom died in 2006. And 2006, sorry. And I just, you know, my grandma had died a few years before that. And I hang on to the memories that we had, that we laughed together, because those are the memories that will stay with you forever. And so I would encourage all of you to just really enjoy everything you can with everybody that's around you and really embrace that. I've got the WOW program, as Julie mentioned, and it's a program that I have a dream for, and it's because of my own challenges that I've gone through, that I've had a mental breakdown. I spent 9/11 in the psych ward, and then I got out without getting treated, and then I was paranoid and manic, so I was in really bad shape for about 4 months of real fear. I ended up in post-traumatic stress for 9 years after that, and due to some wonderful earth angels here, I've been getting amazing healing and coming out of it. What I realized from that whole experience and some more, I was diagnosed with MS in 1987. I came back from that. I read Dr. Bernie Siegel's Love, Medicine, and Miracles. How many people here have heard of that? Yeah, it's an amazing book. And I read Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. And those books turned my life around. Those books were my first insight that everything is not as it appears, and that I didn't have to accept these diagnoses, and I didn't have to keep going down that path. And it caused me to really start turning my life around. And I realized all kinds of things. It's amazing the amount. I took courses, I read books, I talked to different people, and I found out that the mental and emotional connection that our brain and our body have is so much greater than we think it is. And it's amazing. If I would have just accepted what was being thrown at me, I would not be where you see me today. I'm on absolutely no medication right now. I'm absolutely feeling fabulous. I'm laughing at life. I'm loving life. And it's all because I was able to get the help I needed, but it was not in the traditional forms. And so my passion is to bring as much information as I can from the specialists that really know what trauma, because I found out that my basic trauma was caused from being given up for adoption at birth, and then I was, because of legal reasons, was not able to be adopted out until I was almost 3 months old. And I mean, they've even had, in fact, the other night, they had baby orangutans on TV saying how much they need the touch. And so I know that that was my original trauma that started, and from there, it went. By the time I was 27, I was diagnosed with MS. And if you'd have seen me then and seen me now, you wouldn't even know I'm the same person. And so I understand now that that was not what it was being looked like. It wasn't just some disease that got me. It was because I had that much trauma inside. So my goal is to develop programs, have them go into schools, teach children about the importance of grieving, teach children about the importance of the mind-body connection, and having a completely different approach, because our healthcare systems, both in the States and here, are falling apart. They're being overloaded by absolute incredible lack of knowledge. That's all that's causing it. There's so many people on antidepressants and all kinds of things when all they need to do is grieve maybe, you know? And I'm not saying for everybody, I'm just saying there's a great, great portion of people that are on medication that do not need to be. There's a great number of people that are getting cancers and all kinds of sicknesses that don't need to be getting sick. And they certainly don't need to stay that way. And so it's my hope and prayer that I just continue to spread that word and get as many people involved. I've got an amazing response from people so far that want to be involved and get you know, whatever they can contribute to it, and so that we can have a brand new set of educational tools go out that people can actually understand that there is a lot of help available. We've got some discussion materials, and I just wanted to share with you before we'll stop for a really quick break. This is the same author, Dr. Bernie Siegel. He risked his entire career to step out when he wrote Love, Medicine, and Miracles, because he was way out there. He went basically against what the rest of the medical profession does. They would study the people that, you know, if they got diagnosed with this, they died. If they got diagnosed with that, they ended up in a wheelchair. He started studying the people that got diagnosed and lived, and the people that got miraculously cured. And so he was not very popular in the medical profession because he really did start understanding mind-body. And so I had picked up this book from a friend, and in it, he talks about humor. And he says, well, this is actually a different quote from a different person, Friedrich Nietzsche. How do you say it, Nietzsche? Okay. And we should consider every day lost on which we have not danced at least once, and we should call every truth false which was not accompanied by at least one laugh. He talks in here about, as we get older, the importance of keeping our childlike sense of wonder and humor. He talks about, you know, that when you're children, it comes naturally. But as we get older and we start getting stressed and we start having all the pressures, we lose that. We lose the natural ability to keep a humorous perspective. So through here, he goes into different, like he says, it takes courage to be a clown. One must have self-esteem and not worry about what others think of you. Another example is the mailbox at the bottom of our driveway, which is 15 feet in the air. Painted on the side are the words airmail. Everyone knows our house at the post office. Most of all, when you act like a clown, you meet and encourage the clown in others, and you discover children of all ages. I once entered an area that said, "Nobody allowed here," saying to the guard, "I am a nobody." The guard earned my respect and a hug by telling me he was making me a somebody, and so I had to leave. One day, I dressed up as a nurse at a surgical department dinner. I wore a white nurse's outfit I borrowed from our office staff, plus balloons for breasts, a wig, and makeup applied by my wife. And like Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie, I got up and gave a critical, impassioned speech. I was amazed by the positive comments I received the next day at the hospital. Humor makes everything easier to digest. It is wonderful when your ability to laugh brings out the child in another person. You both then experience a much better day. At my post office recently, the clerk told me some jokes while he processed my package. I told him I was going to start mailing empty boxes just to come in and hear his jokes. Humor helps us get through even the toughest of times. The exercises in this chapter will supply you with ideas and sources to bring back humor into your life on a daily basis and uplift your soul. So after the break, we'll look at a few of those and a few other quotes I have. I want to thank you. There's a saying that talks about, don't take life so seriously, you'll never get out of it alive anyway. But I've recently been studying some of the spiritual philosophies of all religions, and they all seem to agree that we're eternal beings. There's not one religion that doesn't agree on that. And so I've changed that, and I say don't take life too seriously because you're going to get out of it alive anyway. Thank you so much for being here. We'll have a discussion after the break. Namaste.